So the question, that I'd like to ask the two of you is, what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of the fact that, given my upbringing and, the poverty, being an immigrant family, single mom, and poor, that I was able to not be self-destructive my whole life. And I might have been much more so had I not had great mentors. So I think, and one of my greatest mentors is Curtis, because 32 years ago, he saved my life. It's just I didn't know what I was doing or where I was going, and so he's been the center of our lives. And so, because of that, and being in a relationship, especially one that's lasted this long, it's work, and so I'm proud of the work that we've done to be able to make us stay together and keep building our love, and also, having children. And Curtis did such an amazing job bringing them up, and
You were there too.
well, I was one of them.
True. True.
So, I'm most proud of the fact that I didn't mess it up. We have a stable family, and that was against all odds.
I would say that I am absolutely most proud of our family. And really, there were times there were roller coasters, and we navigated all the obstacles, and we are together and here and had our kids. That was a miraculous, crazy journey that we documented in our documentary, To the Story of Roman and Nero. Kind of the unlikely story that we were able to become a family.
It took miracles.
It really did.
And, some may call it coincidences. We think they're miracles. The ways that the cycles just made it possible, and that our children's birth is just as sacred and mystical and fantastic as everybody else's. The only thing missing from our story is a double manger. Because they were twins. But I think that's the thing when, everybody puts their energy together to have a child, or,
And to raise that child, not just to have
right. It was...
It's a commitment.
It's a commitment, but it's also good things have to happen. And that is the goodwill of our, family and the immediate
Community.
friends, our community, and the support that we got, especially from our
That we got, but that we created. We co-created
with
all of
our
this,
friends in
with
Nashville.
wonderful people, decisions to raise the kids here in Nashville, and
So-
having very deep relationships with and friendships with people that we've known through the years of being together, and now launching those kids off to college, and then seeing them, becoming adults and thinking that they're already adults, and reminding them that they don't know everything. But
it's always surprising to see them take responsibility and become, the people that we had hoped they would be, instead of the teenage brats that they became for a while. And so it's very beautiful now. I feel like we're closer now, after going through, everybody goes through that, when they have to individuate, not only from us but from each other too. So that was I was surprised, of that part, because I never was a rebel. I just did whatever I wanted to do, and my mother was a bohemian who didn't care. So I didn't fight her, and she didn't fight me. But because of Curtis and the kind of more traditional way that he was brought up, that was like our anchor in raising them.
That's awesome. It's you almost made me cry there at the beginning about who saved who. Because what you didn't hear earlier is when Curtis was talking about how he was so thankful for you.
Aww.
Yeah. It's not even Valentine's Day. What do you think your boys would say? So Desmond, I mean, Arunus always says that you wrote the soundtrack to our generation, and you continue to for the next. You know, if your boys were here, what do you think they would say if you didn't get to write your eulogy, and the boys were tasked with doing it? Which son would you have do it, and what do you think they would say about you?
Well, that's tough because comparing the boys, they're so different from each other. Nero's become an excellent writer, actually. He really has an understanding of words, and I think he inherited that from my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my mother, generations of writers. So I think he has a knack and an ear for the musicality of how words should be put together. Roman be happy just to text it in. and keep the party going.
Somebody told me once, and it may have been Curtis, that Roman's going to run the greatest nightclub known ever.
Well, at one point, Desmond said, maybe we shouldn't send him to college. Maybe we should just, find a nightclub for him to run.
Yeah, and buy them like sturdy velvet ropes for the front, and
he's a very
clipboards with
he's
names.
very intent. Like, they're both really driven in business, which is so interesting. I think of myself as a creative person. He's definitely a creative person, but they are almost like they've rebelled against that part of creativity a little bit. But we'll see where they all end up.
Yeah. The thing is that, I'd love for them to be more artistic, but, maybe having grown up around artists and seeing every Broadway show that ever hit hit a playbill, maybe it's like, okay, been there, done that, and they have other kinds of motivations. They're a different generation. Different generations are motivated by different things. Certainly the music they listen to, urban music, is a lot driven by people who came out of impoverished situations and made it to the top and became billionaires. And so that's the ultimate American dream, right? To be like Jay-Z or Dr. Dre or Beyonce or something like that, who are like royalty to them. And so I can see that their draw towards wanting to be successful might be part of that kind of thing. I've always been an artist, more like a hippie or something, new age and crystals and fasting and green juice, but they're very much more kind of put together and in fact more conservative than I am, or I don't know, maybe even Curtis, because the high school they went to, the kids they went to high school with, they're all going to be the captains of industry. So to keep up with them, they're sort of in that same mind space. But in terms of regrets, I wish that I had spent more time with them than the artists, the ungrateful artists that I was producing and spending time with late into the nights and missing their bedtime and things like that. Every working parent can feel that way if they're not a stay-at-home parent, homemaker. But I traveled a lot. I lost a lot of days traveling. I think being in this COVID situation and being home, I realized how much time I was losing by traveling. It takes a whole day to get anywhere. And then you're there, and then it takes a whole day to come back. But it's not a weekend because The weekend you want to be with your family. So the work days are only Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's just really hard to manage careers like that when you have 3 days to work.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed this period of time. You know, I joke with Curtis that, you know, we really should try to find more time together. I'm just getting to like him, you know. And so, you know, the boys were with us until they went to college in September. So they were home all summer, and, you know, it was like,
They were home from Thanksgiving till
They
last
just
week.
left. They just left.
They were home for 2 months.
So I've really enjoyed being at home. And I think, you know, that's why, you know, I think most people at the end, even though they might have done everything perfect, say, I wish I'd spent more time with my loved ones. I wish I had told them I love you. More. I wish I had hugged them more. And when it all boils down to it, it's the love that we give that is left behind in the hearts of the people that received it. That's our legacy.
I can't. That's
Okay, keep going.
pretty low. You know, as we're talking a little bit about family, I want to come back to kind of your songwriting part, but you mentioned that you're working on a book, and a book of poems, and before you came in, Curtis was talking to us a little bit about your mom and the relationship you now have with your mom after she's passed. But do you mind talking a little about this? We see these containers throughout your studio here.
Yeah, my mom's not as annoying now, you know, so my relationship with her is getting much better since she passed.
So what inspired you then to go through some of her belongings and then start creating a book around poems?
Well, the center of our home growing up, because she was a single mom and she had to work day jobs, but at night she was writing songs or making demonstration tapes of her songs, and then on weekends she'd be out at nightclubs trying to meet artists and give them her songs. And so, you know, the whole idea that the purpose of one's life is to be an artist and to be aspirational, so that you're a working artist that can actually support yourself and your family well by the thing that you do. So that's the whole thing about you know, being an artist. And so my mother was a poet, and she would write poems on the backs of, you know, Burger King napkins. And she was a fantastic poet, really great. And she had many poems published. Now I'm finding out, going through her many boxes. Her book is called My Cardboard Boxes. And at one point, I think she had 100 boxes that we kept moving every which way. And now it's finally sorted, and I've been able to collect all of her poetry and her song lyrics. And, you know, she started seriously writing amazing, highest level poetry in 1945, when she was like 16, 17 years old, in Cuba, in a little provincial town called Pinar del Rio, in the western part of Cuba. So the idea that, you know, I'm sort of getting to know her now more than I ever did, because, you know, she was my mother, and she was, you know, my mom, and she was bohemian also, and we didn't have a traditional family, far from it. But I'm getting to know the greatness of her talent, and also she's talking to me through her poems. And, you know, as I'm sifting through the poems, she actually wrote me little notes, you know, thanking me for doing it. So that's really touching. And I think that, you know, growing up the way I did, I didn't know who my real father was till I was 18. It's like losing one's country, you know. For my mom was Cuba. So we, even though I was born in the United States, you know, we lived in the exile community. So there's loss, loss, and loss. My, you know, my grandfather passed away in the early 60s, and my aunt had a car accident and died, and, you know, my cousins started getting AIDS and dying. I mean, there was a lot of loss in the family. And so through all of that loss, there's a kind of an instinct to try to pull together what you have. All the family photos, a family tree, and you actually come from someone, from somewhere, and you're the result of all of these people that came before you. And so that feels fulfilling. And I'm lucky that I finally turned my attention to all of this, you know, before, you know, I'm made to, you know, by becoming ill or, you know, something like that. It's like I'm feeling energetic and great now. And I'm going to be 68 years old this year. So it's like, this is the time. Because I think that you go through periods in your life, you know, they say that a great movie has 4 stages of the lead character. He's the orphan, and then the orphan becomes the wanderer, goes out and finds this world, and then he becomes the warrior and fights for what he believes in, and then the last phase is the martyr, when he has the wisdom to reach for what he needs more than what he wants. And so I guess I'm in that stage now.
When the book is published, what do you hope others get from the book?
Well, from my mother's book of poetry and lyrics, it's staggering the amount of work she did. I mean, she was still changing words and poems right up to the time she passed away. I mean, I remember it clearly, because we would read her, you know, as she was fading, we'd read her poems, and then she would stop and she would say, that word should be this. And it made like a whole big difference. So she was an artist to the end. And, you know, she, you know, had memory loss and all that, but not when it came to her poems. She could still recite them perfectly, word for word, and sing her songs to the end. And so I think that they're going to see someone who was truly great, but because of circumstances, being in a foreign country, not having mastery over the language, being poor, being a woman, she had a lot of things going against her. And so after she passed, I wanted to do something to honor her legacy, because she was a struggling songwriter that worked really hard. And so I got together with a fellow songwriter producer, Rudy Perez, and we founded the Latin Songwriters Hall of Fame. And it's in honor of my mom, because she was La Musa. So it's we have our award shows called La Musa Awards. And so now we're going into our 10th anniversary. And it's considered one of the most prestigious prizes in Latin music, because most award shows celebrate last year's hit. And really it's the record companies that are, you know, pushing and paying and all that. No, the honorees, the inductees, they have to have had careers that are minimum 20 years. And so then the whole community comes to celebrate them. Even though we're all competitors, we leave our swords outside and we all celebrate each other. And my mother always tried to bring songwriters together. She formed in our little project house, she would have get-togethers and form the first group of Cuban songwriters in exile. And they would be singing their, newly written songs that later became classics. And so, I think that that's what I would love for people to experience. And it's been very difficult translating her songs and lyrics and poems to English, because I want it possible for people to read the English and feel it as powerfully as it is in Spanish. And that has taken a very long time. So that's book one that I was hoping to get out there. And then I've been working on my own autobiography called Living on a Prayer, Big Songs, Big Life, with David Ritz, my co-writer. And that's taken 4 years. And, it's funny because very early on, I introduced my mother. It opens with, very cinematic opening. And I say, it's going to be, she was a star herself. So I have to be careful not to let her take over my autobiography. So she keeps popping in. She keeps popping in all through the book. And in a way, I got to fulfill her dream. It's almost like, okay, I had a natural talent for it, but this was more her dream than mine. I think I just felt like I had to fight for her dream and make it come true. When I was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2008, she was there, and I thanked her from the stage, and she stood up, and she, got applause, but then she turned and looked back at the entire audience, and it was like almost like a standing ovation, because you could tell that this was her prize too. And so I thought that was a very wonderful and telling moment about her. And so, it's like one of those things where the legacy is passed from, one generation to the other. And somehow, for me, having that legacy makes me feel like I wasn't just a mistake of the affair she had, that I was born for a reason. And this is, she had to do it that way, because I had to have those genetics to be able to have not only the talent, but the drive to make my dreams come true. So I've been extremely lucky. I've had everything going for me, and I had hoped to become a big rock star, but it didn't turn out that way. It ended up that the way for me to survive was to helping others be their best. I mean, that's true of many directors that were once actors, record producers that were once artists, and the artists become like your children also. It's like you want them to do well, and you live vicariously through them, like the way my mother lived through me. So that handing off from one generation to the other is what binds or weaves the fabric of humanity.
I'd heard you say once before in a documentary about wanting to be a rock star, and you talked about the band you were in, how that inspired some of the writing you do. And, as I mentioned, there's not an artist I can't think of that you haven't written for, or a song that I sing along to. In fact, I tell a story once that one of your boys were in the car and a song came on the radio, and he said, "Oh, my dad wrote this." And I kind of looked at him. I said, "Who's your dad?" He said, "Desmond Child." I said, "Oh." And I looked at my husband. A couple minutes later, another song came in. He goes, "My dad wrote this one too." I don't normally do this, but I pulled out my phone. I Google searched you. And I was like, holy cow. When we got to lunch, I said, "Roman, is this your dad?" And he said, "Yeah." So you've written for so many people. So if you're saying that you wanted to be the rock star, but your role was to create the music for them to perform,
Well, or co-create with them.
maybe help inspire.
But you know, if I think back, if I had been an artist, I would have saved all those songs for myself. But I probably wouldn't have written them because they were written with them for them. So it's kind of like, you never know what happens, but when you're an artist, there's just really just a limited amount of hits you can have. But when you work with, you know, this one and this one and this one and this one, and your songs become the leading songs, and and compete with all the other songs on that record to be a single, and that single touches people and takes off. And you know, I think about it, it's like my music has touched billions of people on the planet. I think there are people that know my songs. They don't even speak English. They don't even know who sang it. They just know the song. And so that's a very beautiful, fulfilling thing.
You know, as you've been inspired, work with other artists. A year ago, you played the Bluebird in a live show, and you had 3 artists with you. All 3 seemed to be someone that you were either co-writing with, but my words, not yours, that you were mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep that inspiration for what you're writing? Your own book, you're writing a book about your mom, and you're still writing songs, and you're inspiring others. So, I mean, if I think of the legacy, you talked about the legacy that your mom basically gave you to complete. Think of the legacy and how you're impacting so many others. And you have to, obviously, when you wake up in the morning, you got to do something to be inspired to go do it all over again.
Well, I did a podcast last night, and it was all rock musicians. And each one of the interviewers has their own audiences. So they combined together, 5 of them, and all their audiences together to interview me. And I said something that I'd never said before, because, you know, to me it's 1% talent, 99% drive, ambition, hard work. You know, it's like, and then one of the questions was, how do you find inspiration? And it's like, I said, it's like, I don't believe in inspiration. I believe in getting into the ring and in the moment and fighting it out and making something happen. I said, you can quote me on this, inspiration is for dreamers. You know, it's like hard work, you know, and just like feeling like, you know, you're working towards something with a group of people that you're working with. You know, that's the way to win. Collaboration. You know, waiting around for inspiration. You could stare at a blank sheet of paper for many, many days before you decide to just give up on that. So to me, it's the adrenaline of knowing that I'm on a team, in a fight, we're working, that gets me going.
With everything you've talked about, and I hope you have another 30 wonderful years with Curtis, or 32.
Just 30? Then 30 more with someone else? Is that what you mean?
No, and don't let Curtis think that. But if there were one thing that you want to most be remembered for, what would it be? And it's tough because there's so many audiences that you could answer that to.
I think that my idol of all time was Pablo Picasso, who was a Scorpio also. And he was painting and, you know, having a relationship and living life to the very end and into his 90s. And he died with his, you know, with a paintbrush in his hand. And to me, the way that he was so just oozing creativity wherever he went, and being a force of nature, not limited to anything, but committed to becoming an artist, however form that takes. And so I would love to be remembered by that part of me, that I was someone who didn't see boundaries and limits to what I could do. That I could write Broadway shows, I could produce movies, I could write songs, I can write books, I can teach people, I can be a professor, I can, you know, professionally. And for my friends, you know, I'm a very loyal person, and it's one of those things, it's like, if you're my friend, it's for life, and I'm committed, no matter what, to being there for my friends. And, you know, of course, now, you know, I also have my close family. But I think that just in my colleagues and friends, you know, that I was there for them in their ups and downs, you know, not just, you know, in mine. And that they knew that they could count on me, that they could tell me something and it would die right here if they told me that no one should know that. And that kind of trust and loyalty and bonding, that has meaning for me. And so, you know, that's how I feel. And sometimes I get hurt because I don't think, I think that everyone's like me, but that's not true in life. We don't all feel the same way or as deeply or, you know, care as much or you know, it's all varying degrees. But I'm all full force, all out. So if you want me as a friend, know that, you know, it's a commitment.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate it.